So in our chapter 5 here, we're going to introduce integers, a new set of numbers. The integers are all the whole numbers that we've been looking at. And then also their inverses. And that means those negatives that are going to go to the left on the number line. So everything that was a whole number is also an integer, which is also including their inverses or those negative numbers. We're still not dealing with fractions or decimals. We'll get to those in the next chapter. As we go through this section, we're going to be looking at adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing these integers. And those ideas come out throughout different grade levels. You actually usually start investigating these sometimes like in a science class. So you might talk about negative temperatures. So temperatures can get below 0. You also might talk about like money. If you need to buy something and you don't have enough money, what you would do, borrowing that type of money. So they come up in some context before we actually get into the mathematical operations. Now, when I give you a problem, and I'll just put an example up here, I need you to leave it as it is. I don't want you to simplify that. I know, and I think a lot of you know, that I could simplify that plus a negative into subtraction. For this chapter, we're trying to teach our students how to simplify that. We're trying to show them that plus a negative is the same thing as subtracting. We can't just jump right to that. We need to show them and teach them that. So please don't just simplify it. Keep the problem that I have there as the problem. Work that out, and then the goal is after we leave this chapter, we would all feel comfortable simplifying it. So don't simplify a problem at the very beginning. Keep it as it is. And the goal is to teach our students the rule that a lot of us probably know. 1 negative is a negative, 2 negatives make a positive, that sort of thing. We want to get them to that rule, that shortcut, by using these different methods that we have here. So speaking of the methods, I'll start with our chip model. So I'll start with the problem -5 plus 2. Sometimes this chip model is called a charged model. I'll draw 2 different ways to use this. So one way with chips is to represent these numbers with actual items. So you could actually use real life chips that you could hold in your hand, like little plastic discs. Think about like poker chips, or they make colored little smaller discs. So I'm going to have the negative represent with red, and that's usually just kind of like a standard, but you can really do any color. So -5 I can represent with these 5 red chips. Or you could represent it, sometimes it's called a charge model, if you just represent it with little negative signs to show there are 5 negatives. I'm going to have 2. It's a positive number, so I'm going to represent it with black, or I could represent it with my plus signs. You really could place those anywhere. I placed them on the end there, but you could place it wherever you want them. A positive and a negative cancel each other out. They are inverses of each other. So they cancel each other out, and my answer is -3. We can keep this same problem, and we can think about it being a number line. So let me draw myself a number line out here. Make sure when you're drawing your number line that things do go in the order. Those negative numbers on the left-hand side of 0. -1 should be closest to 0, and it counts out from there. And then we've got our positive numbers on the right-hand side. So if I were to keep my same problem up here, I would start at -5. I'll have some little demarcation that I'm starting there. And since it's positive, I'm going to be going to the right 2. So you got to show me somehow that positive there is going to the right. So I need like this arrow here. I need somehow where you started and where you stopped. If you don't want to draw a little person, you could always draw like a star or something like there, but I need that direction so I know what these represent. A lot of times people just put like 2 humps. I really don't know what that means. So give me a start and stop, some little symbols there, or the word start and stop, or a word that you're going to the right, that sort of thing. It can get a little bit more challenging when we have the like maybe 2 negatives. So I'm going to come up and work the same problem that I had up before. -3 plus a negative 2. So let me draw another number line here. So I'm going to start at that negative 3. This positive would tell me that I'm going to the right, but then I hit this guy and it tells me that I'm going to the left. Or you can think about you're walking, and this left could also be thinking about that you're walking backwards. That's another way that a lot of times people do it. You can actually have students get out and do this. You can put tape on the floor and have students actually physically walk it out to get their bodies moving on there. So I'm actually going to be going to the left because of that negative sign. I was facing toward the right with the positive, and then I got the negative, so I started going to the left. And this is why the order is really important, that I kind of know what you're talking about. So you might want to use words here. If you're going to, when you go to show work for this, use words like left and backwards, or draw me some arrows. All of that's important so that I can see how you would communicate this to students that you would have to teach, because that's your job, is to communicate that this plus a negative, they would see, well, plus a negative, that's going to the left, that's subtraction. So we would then point out that I could just write the problem a little bit simpler and I wouldn't have these two different signs there. So that's kind of our job, and this number line helps show that we would end up going to the left.